So I'm just gonna hand it over to Ferdinando and let him take it from here, man. Go ahead.
No, but thank you really much for this opportunity. Like, it does means a lot for me that I wasn't expecting really to be a co-president or anything in the philosophy club, but I can say that I know that you do not feel like you achieve everything that you wanted to achieve with your club, but I do believe that you did an amazing job. I want to say that right now. Let me go. Um, I do feel like you did an amazing job. Like, we have been very active, and a big part of it is through your leadership. So yeah, I already move away. Can you still hear the background noise? These people
Yeah,
are
we
screaming.
can, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, so thank
There you
you.
go. I'm here. This is better. So yeah, like, thank you so much for this opportunity, and hopefully we continue that legacy that you gave us.
Definitely, man.
I don't know if Fortuna wants to say something in her regard, but yeah.
Just hello everyone. I have a lot of fun with Philosophy Club, and I also, like Ferdinando, didn't expect to be president. So when I was asked, I was actually I was pleasantly surprised, but I also felt like I didn't really necessarily deserve the position. But I'm hoping I can, live up to the work Orlando has done and how amazing he is as the current president of Philosophy Club. And I hope I can exceed everyone's expectations. And yeah, thank you guys for having me as president or co-president.
That's great. I mean, listen, y'all, you weren't our first, second, third, or fourth choices, but so glad you stepped up, both of you. Really, just so huge. Appreciate it. No, I'm just joking. We're very excited. You're going to do a great job.
All right.
So I guess I should move on then. So, well, hello guys. Today our topic is what is your philosophy? Is that correct? Like, are you okay?
Like the purpose of philosophy, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, if I may start, honestly, for me, philosophy. I know some people may be a bit of surprised, but my history with philosophy is really not about books or stuff. I'm not like the most knowledgeable, knowing exactly when, like, what Socrates said, what Kierkegaard said, or any of that kind of stuff. But I did came from a family and friends that we used to just talk about life. So really, philosophy has come for me, like, I won't say naturally, but through my circumstances, I guess, and it have developed how I perceive the world. Everything that I am has been through philosophy one way or another, whether I realized it before or not. But it has been something more clear for me after all these years that I've been here with Philosophy Club. Because despite of what other people may think that we do talk, we usually talk is just really about our life and how we perceive whatever event is happening surrounding us. And this club really helped me realize that everything that I've been talking, the way I think, or even the way I talk, is a way to philosophy. And I'm not sure if this is the same way as you were introduced to philosophy or not, but I do like to think, to hear you guys, like, how philosophy, like, how do you get introduced to philosophy?
It seems like what you're describing is kind of like what it is to sort of just, I guess, be human. You're describing philosophy as your own personal philosophy. It's kind of formed based upon your experiences and your interactions. Some of them, within your control, some without. But I agree with all of that. But I wonder, what is somebody like a philosophy student who's paying to take a philosophy class? What do you take the purpose of it to be? Because it's like, okay, you take an economics class, or you take, just any math class. There's, a clear, for most people, there's a clear application, there's a clear purpose to it. What do we take philosophy's purpose to be? Both, in its kind of academic context, but also, to your point, more personally, more generally speaking.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I continue talking. I just really want to start listening to other people. But yeah, for me, philosophy is just the way how I really understand the world. Like, I honestly, I do believe that I have a mind of a philosopher. I tend to ask myself too many questions. It's ridiculous. And sometimes I even joke aside saying that I talk too much with myself. Maybe it's too much. I find myself hilarious in that regard. But I do believe that everyone does this one way or another. For me, it's just me with my thoughts, sometimes writing. But for other people, it can be presented as art, like uh, songs, painting, or maybe just your work. There are different ways of how you get in touch with these broad terms, at least in my perspective.
Yeah. I kind of agree with what you're saying, Ferdinando. It's like this idea of like, I didn't find philosophy, philosophy found me. And it's like, that's just, as we're going through life, we just start to question, what's my purpose here? How am I supposed to live my life? And I feel like as people go through adversity, as we challenge ourselves, we kind of find ourselves in this world where there seems to be no answers and we have to find them for ourselves in different ways and shapes or forms. Um, and I think philosophy, just broadly speaking, is this idea that how should I live my life? What is the meaning of all of this? That's like the big, broader question that it's looking at in a very metaphysical, internal way, I think, in my opinion. But yeah, Israel, I think you're next.
Okay. Hi, guys. Congratulations to the two of you, Fortuna and Ferdy. Okay. For me, I think when I look at philosophy, it started out as just an elective. I didn't know what philosophy was. Andrew Cow just kind of advised me that, oh yeah, just take philosophy because it was an honors class and I needed an honors class, so it kind of like fit together. But after the discussions and after I kind of hung out with the philosophy club and participated in the DCCC's philosophy, whatever it was we did in the library thingy, it kind of made me wonder or ponder a little bit more in terms of refining my questions about what philosophy meant to me. Because as a researcher, I'm somebody who's very analytical and very methodical, and for me, asking the right questions sort of makes me want to work better or want to investigate more. So philosophy just became a method for me to be asking good questions or meaningful questions and trying to understand different perspectives. Just by understanding different perspective, it didn't mean that I was changing my opinion. It just meant that I'm open to more points of view. So I guess to me, that's more opinions or more perspectives is what philosophy means to me.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of like bring up what you're saying and kind of what Fortuna was saying last time, I think Fortuna was looking specifically, should philosophy be something that is useful or there's a utility behind it, or should it be like abstract? Should it be we should be thinking more outside of the box? And I think it's just this idea of exercising some form of freedom, being able to look outside the box or being able to look at how I want to manage my own life. And I think that's kind of like the base of what philosophy kind of is. Marcus.
No, I agree with you there, Orlando. It goes back to, Socrates saying, is the unexamined life worth living? And when you think about the majority of people here on earth, we kind of grow up and then we become part of the system, and then we just do what we think we should do or what we're told to do or what we think we'd like, without really a lot of the times choosing to turn into ourselves and analyze what we are and what we've become and why we've become the way we have become. And I think that is almost a duty of being human, that you should examine yourself and where you've come from and what you are now because of that, and determine some faults that you may have carried throughout that process. And I know I have, and many others, if not everyone, carry some vices or faults of thought throughout being raised, and then throughout the education system. I'm sure we all experience something where we later learn is not true of either ourselves or the world. And I feel like that is that's the very basis of philosophy to me, is is turning into yourself and recognizing that you and everything that you think and are never going to be true. Like, it'll never be perfectly true. It'll never be perfectly right. Okay. So when you acknowledge that to yourself, you then accept the ongoing ability to change consistently with everything that you experience from then on. And from there, you start to see a lot of growth and, you know, a huge change, I believe, in your attitude and your thoughts and your opinions and your priorities. A lot of the I saw a huge shift in my priorities growing up, you know, through school. I never really knew what I wanted to do. I just liked talking in class. You know, I always raised my hand. I always answer some question with some BS that I thought about. And I really never knew how to use that. You know what I'm saying? Until I took an intro to philosophy class at Richland. And I was like, oh, this is what I wanted. This is what, yes. You know, it's what I realized that I've always loved now. Just never realized it. And I think that everyone given the chance to properly investigate themselves within the world of philosophy is going to find that the same feeling. So I'll yield the rest.
So it seems like philosophy kind of enables you to have this growth mindset and exploring different ways of life and accepting that maybe there's not just one way of living.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do believe that.
A little bit, real quick. And, you know, let's try to think about this. That was really beautiful. I mean, you really waxed poetic there. I love that. But here's the thing: should you have to subject yourself to that growth if you don't want to? And again, I'm, you know, playing devil's advocate here. It's like, you know, so I went to a school where I had to take philosophy class. It wasn't up to me. I had no choice. It was required. And well, you know, I could also extol the you know, the richness and you know, the beautiful experience and the effects of it all. There were certainly a lot of students who were like, I don't understand why I need to take this class if I have, you know, no interest in it, and I'm going to pursue careers that have seemingly nothing to do with it. And, you know, on some level, maybe they have a point. I mean, it seems funny to kind of be like, take this, everybody should take this because it's so cool and you're definitely going to like it. And I do kind of agree with that, of course, based upon what I think human beings kind of are. But is that necessarily the case? I mean, is philosophy really for everybody? I'm not so sure.
I think, can I say that something real quick? I think, Manzi, I think it's only when you're subjecting philosophy to this very specific field of learning. I don't think it's that. I think philosophy is something more broad that we kind of all practice in our day-to-day life.
Yeah, and for me, for example, philosophy has become something of an expression. Yeah, lately have been trying to like deal with the whole thing that is happening like surrounding us, and it has been through philosophy really that I've kind of like set my mind straight. So it's just an expression, honestly. Give me a second. That somebody is iPhone want to speak. I don't know iPhone. So I mean, I
yeah,
think that
no, I was going to respond to Manzi's comment really quickly. It's, you know, if it is a true duty of being human, I want to say we come into this world not knowing what the world is already. We are born into this world, and we come into it with a preset world full of people in power that have set rules down and circumstances that we don't know for sure yet, and we don't know anything for ourselves yet, and so we're told things. And so I feel like philosophy is the proper practice of finding things for yourself, finding the truth for yourself, rather than it being told to you or taught to you or being paid to teach it to you. That's what half of us do. We go, I don't want to learn it for myself. I'd rather just pay someone to teach me what I want to know and do what I want to do in a world that's already been set forth before me. And to me, I guess to each his own, but personally, that doesn't sound like a life well lived. Because again, you're not examining yourself as a thing. So I'll yield. As the number person, I don't know what the name has disappeared again. But if you were next, go ahead and speak. I don't know, the numbers disappeared, but go ahead.
Oh, did they leave?
I believe, is it iPhone? Is it? It was a 4
It's iPhone. Okay, so for me, I believe. Well, I'm not even a philosophy major. It was stated I had this plus other classes I could have taken. However, my counselor told me that this would be a great pick. He didn't suggest it, but he just said, this would be something good for you. So I chose it. It's been okay. Actually, I'm in Professor Bitten's class right now. My name is Mina, by the way. And, you get to learn different things. So yes, of course, it is not something that is within my degree plan or something that I may not use today. However, a lot of these things we have had to use during this pandemic. A lot of these things we have counted on other people to need assistance with, like the people who work at Walmart or Kroger. Of course, they're not having the best jobs. However, we depend on them.
Hi, Mina. Welcome. I feel like everyone's kind of taking a stance of like philosophy is educational, I guess. And I want to pose an alternative that philosophy ought to relate to justice, right? Because I feel like normative ethics can essentially be broken down into what is just versus, the educational aspect of it that everyone else is talking about. And I think that abstract moral principles that are abstract from reality are kind of not necessarily good, because we have to account for ethics in the real world, right? So like society doesn't live in a volume. For example, there's a philosopher called Charles W. Mills who talks about how we assume all humans are the same in philosophies such as Kantianism, which ignores power structures in the real world, or we assume that we have the capacity to perform these idealized goals or think rationally, or some people lack education to make an in-depth analysis of these sort of theories to make these decisions in their own real life. So I feel like to a certain extent, philosophy should be related to justice for the people who are specifically oppressed, right? Instead of just being about educational aspects of it, because a big evaluative term in normative ethics, right, is the word ought. Like, what should we ought to do, right? And that means that morality guides action, which means that context is needed to guide that action. But then power structures in the real world define that context. So morality happens in the real world based on context, but ideal theories like Kantianism and utilitarianism don't use that context in the real world. They don't take into account these different power structures that we have, like being a woman versus being a man, being LGBTQ, being of a certain race, of being of a certain minority race. So I definitely think that it should definitely be more related to justice instead of education, like what is just and what is moral and what is what ought to happen.
So can I just say really quickly, like I sort of agree and disagree with you. I don't think there should be like a specific function for philosophy. I think it's just the exploration of. I think in terms of philosophy and how it relates to like the ideal world, you have certain things like law. You have law, that is kind of what sets the social standard. That is sort of a derivative of philosophy. And that's where you get that idea of function. This is how society should function.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, let's take utilitarianism, right? That utilitarianism in and of itself is a great, idea to debate and discuss about, but can we really apply it to the real world? Is it really relevant? Because of the fact that racism exists, the fact that sexism exists, and homophobia exists, and there's certain groups that are more likely to be that are going to be put down because of utilitarianism. Is it really fair? Is it just?
I agree that our laws shouldn't be reflected by that sort of philosophy in terms of the fact that you're right, they do not account for that. But I still do think that certain fields that may not apply directly to our real world are still worth exploring. Not necessarily specific example you gave, but maybe even like something like metaphysics. But Isra is next. Oh, Isra.
Yes, I'm here. So for me, something that Professor Manzi said way at the beginning of the class when I took his ethics class was that philosophy wasn't a place for answers, it's a place for more questions. So when we question things, that's when we think of things, and that's when we actually challenge the beliefs and the opinions and the worldview of not even what others think of a particular thing, but our own view. For example, something that he had said, because I'm a person of strong faith, I'm very religious, so that really sort of helped open the door to questioning my own set of beliefs in terms of why do I believe in what I do? Why do I have certain sets of things that are immovable for me, that I consider that, okay, if that line's crossed, I won't be, the result would affect me in so and so direction. So I feel like it, and not only as a growth mindset, but also just in terms of understanding, not only, like everyone's been saying, it's a very good way of understanding yourself. So I believe philosophy, not only from an educational point of view, but as a part of human existence. I don't think humans would be humans without philosophy. Like, you can say whatever you want about souls, you can say whatever you want about people behaving a certain way, but at the end of the day, I think to be human is to also philosophize, I guess, in simple terms, to me at least.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I can see that. I agree. I saw that Marcus is keeping score. Who is the next one? But
Emily,
I
I
would
believe.
like to make this one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say that I 100% agree with Isra. I think, well, in all of the opinions so far, our perspectives, I think they're all right in a sense that philosophy is so complex that you can't just label it as any one thing. Like, it is education, it is justice, it is its own perspective. But it's because philosophy has several different branches. And I think overall, I think philosophy is necessary, but also it's unavoidable as a human. I think it allows us to have a deeper reflection on everything. Not like we could study one thing and find its philosophy behind it, or we just have our own thoughts, and just everyone has our own introspection, and we can reflect ourselves, or we can have our own perspective where we can reflect on other things. So overall, it's just one big study. It's just multiple things. I consider it a synonym for just the deeper meaning behind life. Like, it's philosophy is like one word that summarizes a lot of things in one, but overall it just has this deep reflection.
Yeah. Pretty well said. Like, it's sort of this reflection of this internal struggle for us to always just want to know more. What was next? It was Marcus.
Yeah, I agree completely. I want to agree with Emily and Fortuna about it's never seemingly one thing, and it's because it's this way of focusing this reasoning that we have as a human being to specific points of the human experience, which is freedom. And so we then get to dig deep into whichever part of the spectrum we choose and discover more of the truth. And the truth seems to be the center focus, I believe, in all philosophical endeavors personally, because that's what we ask questions for. We ask questions to find the answer to something, which is what we hope to be the truth of said thing. And so we find ourselves asking questions about justice, true justice. Where does the true justice lie? Where does true being lie? Where does the true human lie? Where does true love lie? Everything of this nature. And I love that we can turn ourselves into anything and into ourselves more specifically and search for those answers. And I feel so proud to be able to, do it with, more people. And it just personally gets me so happy, just like doing it, which is weird. I don't know. I just get so happy. And I hope that others could feel the same way. And that's about my 2 cents there that I wanted to add. So I yield.
Does it really bring us closer to the truth, or does it kind of show us that maybe there is no absolute truth?
I think it shows us that the more we think we know, the more we actually don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. And so I believe it was Socrates again who said, like, we would hate for there to be an end to this. There's no actual end, or maybe it was Aristotle, one of them, I forget. But they hated, or they loved the fact that the true purpose is to never find the end, but it's ever ongoing.
I like that.
And I absolutely love that. And I believe it was Socrates who said that the true, what a philosopher really loves in the end is what he really wants, what he seeks for is death, because truly death is the answer to everything. We find whether we've been living in whatever we think we have. And I love that he says that, because it's kind of true. It's like ironically, cynically true, how all this talking and all this thinking we do is really just in search of the answer that is obtained through death.
Well, could death be the end, or could it just be start to a cycle that never ends?
It's the beginning to something else. Let me say that. The end of this, the beginning of another thing. So I'll yield.
All right, we should let Marco go. It's your turn, Marco.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Marco.
Hello.
That is such a professional setting. Remember when I thought it was like in YouTube or something. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm taking philosophy this semester for summer 1, and I've been to some of the meetings like twice. One for the park meeting collaboration, and another for another time. So I kind of didn't know what philosophy was, and so being in this course right now, I'm kind of getting the gist that it's about having like an opinion and wanting to know more, like being like open-minded, really. And I've seen like a lot of people in the discussion boards, like different thoughts, and just wanting to know more is basically what I think philosophy is. And questioning is like the biggest thing that I've learned from this course so far, is to question things and don't let your thoughts be like the only thing in your mind, but give opportunity from other people's perspective.
Marco, I love that you said that, because again, everybody seems to be sharing the sentiment that we naturally want to know more. And we naturally, as humans, want to learn more about ourselves and the world around us. I'm not so sure that's the case is all. You know what I mean? It's hard to say that every single human being wants anything, you know what I mean? Aside from, the bare minimum to survive. So it's one of those things where, again, I think you nailed it. Philosophy is definitely, it lies in this desire to want to, again, expand your horizons and have a deeper understanding of the things that are important to you. But I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I'm sold on the idea that it really is for everyone. And yeah, that's why I keep pushing up against this.
Well, hey,
and again,
man,
I'm playing the devil's advocate.
I got a question for you though. So if someone maybe doesn't want to explore, doesn't have that same knack, is it possibly because they've never been exposed to it?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I say the same thing about anchovy pizza.
I'll definitely try it. I'll say that. Fortuna is next.
Well, Manzi, to answer your question, I think philosophy is for everyone in the sense that, sure, everyone might not want to sharpen their mind and think about these, very complicated philosophical topics, but everyone applies philosophy in their life one way or another by asking themselves simple questions like, for example, is God real? That's probably, I think, one of the most fundamental questions. Is there a higher being of power? That I think it's safe to say that, dang near everyone in their life asks themselves that question at one point or another. So definitely, I think everyone is philosophizing. Is that a word? Don't know.
I like it.
In one way or another. In one way or another, they're doing that. I don't know if it's necessarily, I don't know if they're necessarily engaging their mind about different ideas and different topics, but they're definitely at least having that debate within their own mind. So I think in that sense, philosophy is for everyone. But also, just to go into my other point about philosophy being for justice, I think we can sit here and we can debate about Kantianism or utilitarianism or social contract theory all we want, right? But the whole purpose, I think, of educating ourselves is so we can go ahead and then apply these ideas to our own lives, right? Because we're not just living in a bubble. We're not gonna take this information and not do anything with it. We're going to go ahead and apply it to the real world and use that information at our own will. So I think in that aspect, philosophy is definitely, the focus of it shouldn't purely just be education, because I mean, I'm not saying that it is. Obviously, philosophy is very multifaceted and there's so many different uses for it. But I think the main purpose of normative philosophy, as in like guiding what we do in our day-to-day lives, is definitely for justice and improving the lives of like people around us and improving our own lives. And it goes beyond just like sitting down and having discussions like this in a classroom setting or having discussions like this in philosophy club, because like I think it's safe to say all of us are gonna go home or sleep tonight with more information in their minds, but also use that extra information and try to make the world a better place.
Yeah, that's a great position. Do you feel that way about all education or just philosophy? Like, is any education just for the sake of education, or is all education for the sake of, as you're saying, applying it?
I like education just for the sake of education, but I definitely think that at the end of the day, we're applying that education one way or another, you know? I don't necessarily think all education is for justice, but it's definitely to apply in the real world, or else what's the point, you know? Isn't it kind of okay.
Yeah, and I also want to add before we move on, Fortuna, that this is also a place for us to challenge our ideas, because, I mean, if we just philosophize by ourselves, everything can seem like true for us. But it is not until you actually get this outside of you that you start actually like being able to have that feedback of your own ideas and start like kind of developing into something more. Huh?
You talk to yourself, so doesn't your alter ego tell you, debate with you, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly my direction. You cannot really get to know how truthful or how like really that philosophy of yourself means for you until you actually take it out and then you receive something from it. Like for me, that's like you have to go through that process. Otherwise, that idea there is not really have been proofreaded, or but yeah, it's still something very raw.
It hasn't been vetted. It hasn't been vetted. Yeah, I agree. Good point. Good point there, Ferdinando. If you were about done, I believe John was up next.
Yeah, it's fine. I just wanted to add something very quick before moving on.
So I'm just trying to clarify, is the point someone was making that you can't go through life without considering philosophy? Did I understand that right?
It was probably made at some point, and I probably said it.
Okay. None of you are married to my wife. Here's why I say that. When I first took a philosophy course, when I get together with friends and discuss things like Randianism or, I mean, take your pick. Not only does she leave the room, she tends to leave the room with a red face. Even though she didn't participate, she's already red-faced over the fact that this is the nature of the discussion we're having. So does that mean necessarily that she doesn't consider it? Does that mean that she has some sort of internal negative response to it? I don't know what that means, but what I can tell you for sure is she will not sit down and discuss it, because to her, to have to sit down and discuss it means to have an open-ended discussion with no real true direction. It's not something she enjoys doing. She's a historian and an anthropologist by training.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So she has these very defined constructs of how to have investigatory, or even, if you want to say, existential discussion. There's still some sort of construct to it in her mind. So to consider, hey, is there a God of some kind? Is there a true meaning to why we're here? She doesn't care, and has said so numerous times. So when I tell her, especially since we've been quarantined at home, she's at work actually today, so I get to actually talk about this louder with the door open. But when I've been having philosophy club meetings with you guys since quarantine, I'm sitting in a room behind 2 closed doors to make sure she can't hear me. And then half the time I'll go out, hey, you're afraid to really... Well, it sounded like you were a little loud there for a minute, but I mean, it's okay. So to not take up 20 minutes, the reason I say that is, am I the only person married to someone or otherwise, friends, family, whatever, that's ever run into somebody that truly does not care, because it seems the probability of that seems pretty low that I'm the only one that's had that exposure.
No, you're
Yield my
you're
time.
absolutely right, John. And it's a thing that we're born with curiosity, and then along the way we all have these questions, but then along the way I think we either forget that we had the right to question, or that we used to love to question things, and like you said, we find something that we're into or love, and then she falls in an everydayness where we can forget that we loved, forgetting that we knew everything in the world and that we could change ourselves. So yeah, you're not alone there. I believe, Fortuna, did you want to say something real quick?
Yeah, am I on mute?
Yeah, you're on mute. But I think I have to do Israel is next, I think.
Okay. Wait, I'm not on mute? Oh, thanks.
Yeah, John, I know a million people like that, for the record.
I don't think that's necessarily, I don't know. I don't think that's, even if she had asked herself, hey, like, how do you define freedom? Or even being a historian, right? She's exposed to a lot of different cultures, I'm assuming, being into, studying humans and human nature. I think inherently, not only does her field have to apply philosophy in one way or another, I also think that the fact that she leaves the room red-faced and some strong, emotional reaction gets elicited from her, I think that emotional reaction has to come from somewhere. She's not getting angry just for the sake of getting angry. I think that there's a mental process in her mind that she goes through, and that she maybe comes to a realization about something. Even hating philosophy, that's kind of a philosophy, right? So, I don't know.
Exactly.
Any philosopher would directly disagree with that.
I don't know.
Tell her I said hating philosophy is a philosophy, and then we'll see what her reaction is then.
I feel like even people who claim to have no principles abide by some certain principles, and they just don't explore it. And I think that in and of itself is a philosophy, like how you said, Fortuna.
Would she kill someone? Whether the answer is yes or no, that is a philosophy. That is a personal philosophy that she has justifications for. Whether she can elaborate on those justifications or not, she does have them, like emotionally, she knows that she has them.
Like whether we like it or not, we're kind of forced to make moral decisions about life. And that's just it.
Exactly.
I don't think that's the case. I think you can just allow people to make moral decisions for you, and you accept those decisions. That's not you making, or I guess maybe that's your point. You're choosing to accept other people's. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, you're resigning, maybe?
Yeah, yeah, along those lines.
Well, Isra is next. Isra? You still with us?
Yes, I keep forgetting I'm on mute. Forgive me. I feel like this is super interesting. No, John, you're not alone in terms of facing people, or not to that extent at least, but I have met people who are that closed off to the idea of having an open-ended discussion. And I think to a degree, I was that way as well. Because like I said, I am pretty analytical, and to me, everything used to be black and white in terms of everything has a set duration, everything has, it was pretty methodical. And philosophy is anything but method. If anything, it's an open-ended discussion, and it's just a never-ending discussion where topics keep emerging from one discussion to another. So I kind of understand not exactly where your wife comes from, but I do, since being a person that was like that, not in terms of avoiding open-ended discussions, it's just, I kind of understand what she may be, why she may be reacting that way. One thing that I had to chime in, what Fortuna was saying was the relationship between education and application to the real world. I feel like it's true not only of philosophy, but education in itself, or else why else are we all getting educated? Or why else are we spending so much time and money trying to educate ourselves, if not to apply it in the real world? I feel like when it comes to philosophy, people don't realize that. I believe this was brought up by Fortuna in a couple of last meetings, was that philosophy, people don't realize that they are discussing philosophy just because they don't title it that way or they don't perceive it that way. But at the end of the day, the nature of the discussion or the context of the discussion does lead to one or the other philosophical topic. It's just their lack of knowledge of being able to label it that way that makes them seem, oh no, I'm not a philosopher, or I'm not into philosophy. But yes, they do like discussing things in depth. They do like questioning the norms. They do like to do all those things that check the box that says, yeah, that's philosophy. But yeah, my point more was towards an application in terms of, okay, yeah, we do discuss philosophy, but to me, it's only useful if it ends up, or if it leads to an action, or if it leads to an implementation of some sort. It can open up doors to a new ways of thinking about things, but at the end of the day, I think it's fruitful only if it's applicable in the real world.
Yeah, because, and just to respond briefly, yeah, it comes down to this, as somebody mentioned before, yeah, as you mentioned before, quoting me. So let me quote you quoting me. Wow. New low for me. Yeah, it's
oh, come on.
if you're not expecting answers from philosophy, then why do it? Well, because you enjoy the activity. But is the activity just for the sake of enjoyment, or is there some sort of greater upshot or payoff or something like that? And so I like this idea of, you try to apply it concretely and maybe taking action or something like that. But also you could say, well, it does teach you how to develop certain skills that could serve you in the world, even if, again, you don't really care to think metaphysically, but you're able to now think even more carefully, maybe even more logically, in whatever your area is, whatever your life is. I mean, that could be a benefit that isn't necessarily considered, but it's shared by everybody, even if you don't necessarily enjoy the process, I guess.
I think to some degree, I mean, philosophy can have multiple functions. Obviously you can have the applicable side, but then you can see it kind of like an art. What is art? What's the function of art? It's sort of to convey and to express and to kind of extend and expand on the imagination. And some people can use philosophy in that same sort of sense, where like they're expanding their mindset, or rather their horizon. And I think I absolutely agree with Fortuna and Isra to say that you should apply, but you can also use it for different reasons. Let's see
I
here.
believe Lindsay was next. If you're ready to speak, you're up.
I think that it's more so to
Officer alumni.
sorry. I think it's more so to challenge ourselves and our position and how we think about certain things. And like when y'all said about applying it, well, if you're not going to apply it, then I kind of feel like you're not really going through the whole process, because the greater payoff is building character. And Manzi, you asked about why do we take philosophy classes? Well, it's like, oh, you read this ethics class. Oh, that sounds interesting. Right from wrong. Well, then you get in the class and you're assigned a paper. What's your moral position? And you're like, oh my God, like, I don't know. Now I need to think about this more. Like, where do I stand morally? So you can either BS that paper and just choose a philosopher and go with their beliefs, or it can tear you up like it did me, and you got to get an extension because you don't know and you're having to engage. So maybe the person's wife that gets red-faced, maybe it's more of like this internal thing, like almost like maybe an embarrassment. It's probably not the right word, but because she's probably not considered these topics and doesn't really know like where she really stands. So
Unfamiliar and then maybe uncomfortable.
Yeah, and so I think it's more of like a tool to build your character and figure out where you stand on certain issues, how you think, and it's a lot more than educational. And I don't think it is for everybody, because some people really don't care. They don't care if they are selfish, they don't care about their morals, and they could care less to indulge in such philosophy. But other people might read it and be like, oh, I thought I didn't think that way, but now considering this changes my whole beliefs.
It also could be fear, going into your point, Lindsay, like
Yeah.
I'm terrified of thinking about what happens after death. So anytime someone brings it up, I will leave the room. I will get
Like bolts, like you're done.
yeah. So, and it gives me existential crisis, and it gives me anxiety. So, and you know, my response to that is anger, especially if I told someone, hey, I don't want to talk about this, and they continue talking about it. So it definitely could be fear as well, fear of the unknown.
Too.
I agree with both those points, and I want to. Why do humans? It's like we have this thing. We are metaphysical creatures, correct? We versus a rock versus a tree. A tree has no ability to contemplate its purpose on being in the ground or covering shade. But we as a thing, as a singular object, okay, have this experience of the physical world that other living things don't really share anywhere close to us, that we have the ability to reason and to try to understand meaning behind things. Do things have meaning, or are they just there? Or because we experience meaning, does that mean that meaning exists? Because the very fact that we experience the this expression of meaning, is that almost enough proof that it does exist? Because we are things of the universe, you know, we share experiences of it. I love it because we discount ourselves so much as human beings by going out, you know, and just working a 9 to 5, forgetting that we have this ability to challenge everything around us. And as it is, we're so special, and we forget to consider the differences we have as a living thing versus the rest of the world, and the superpower that we then share as that thing, which is contemplation of reason and meaning. Because as Professor Manzi so famously said in one of his philosophy classes, like you make your own meaning. You know, a human being gives meaning to things. That is almost the purpose of being human, is to give this table that's in front of me. It's a piece of wood, okay? It is nothing without the word table. It is just a word. It's a piece of wood. But then I give it meaning and purpose through the understanding of the word table, and understanding that the structure of atoms that is representative of a table means that I can put things on said thing and use it for a purpose. And that can literally be applied to every single thing in this world. And I think I want to go back to duty of a human being, because to me it seems, I feel like you find it your duty after a while, because people will find themselves stuck in life one day when they go, or maybe everyone likes, you know, living a life unobserved. I don't know, but to me it seems impossible, okay? I feel like everyone will eventually reach a point where they're like, I don't, like, I know what I want and I know what I am, but I still don't know why I am or why this is. And that's when they start to realize that they still have the ability to ask questions. We all had this every time as a child. I know we've all been around children where they're asking questions all the time. You couldn't get me to shut up. If I was around anyone, I'd be like, what does that mean? No, what do you think? Well, what does that mean? It's where this thing that is born into the world with just this capacity to ask questions and try to understand. And we almost forget that we do that. And we forget that it's in our nature, because the world teaches us otherwise, that is not our nature. Our nature is to capitalism, fund the economy, do the job, blah, blah, blah. But rather, what if our true job of human beings is to do the exact opposite of that? Is to sit around a tree talking with good friends, you know, sharing some food, a glass of wine, etc., and just talk, you know, because not many things can do that. But a lot of other things can do work like humans do. Like obviously machines can do that, but can they do what we do? What makes a human special? And I feel like if we focused more on doing what makes a human special, we would find ourselves a lot easier than doing other things, you know, that we find that, oh, wow, this thing can do what I can do. Well, then what makes me special? Well, every human has the same specialness about them. It's the ability to turn inward, to turn to things, to understand, to reason, etc. And it's just, I feel as if the world teaches us to forget that. And so I'll yield the rest of my time. I didn't mean to raise my hand. I'm sorry. I was done there.
Marcus,
Marcus, please do not refer to Manzi as famous. He does not need that help.
Marcus, I think you were on mute. Can you repeat that?
Oh, okay. Well,
I make that joke once a week. No, thank you for sharing that. There's a lot I want to respond, but I want to hear from other people as well.
Marcus, you should read into an author called Judith Butler, because she talks a lot about how you had an analogy for the table, and
yeah.
like how what makes a table is the fact that you can set stuff on it, and what makes something not a table is the fact that you can't set stuff on it. That makes sense. So she talks a lot
Yeah.
about that and like assigning identities to different things, and she goes into more like gender and sexuality, but like she's really fascinating.
What was put it in the chat. You said Judith Butler, I believe.
Yes.
All right, let me look it up.
I'll send some notes as well that I took.
Do it.
But yeah, that's it.
Does anyone else want to comment on what I said or tell me I'm stupid or whatever?
Well,
Feel free.
for telling you that, we don't need for you to talk. We can always just say it. But I do actually agree on your perspective a lot. I like it a lot. I keep seeing that philosophy is being right now like just mentioned as the deep stuff, but it doesn't necessarily have to be deep subjects. For example, sometimes we just philosophize on how you like the sandwich, whether with cheese or without cheese, and why. Like then when you start like describing like the texture, the smell, some maybe can be related to something on your past that your mom used to do it with cheese. So now it's a way for you to connect with that experience. Something as basic as making sandwich, it can turn into something very philosophical, even when it doesn't really do much for our lives specifically, but it does help us like understand, for example, why we like the sandwich done that way. Yes, philosophy does help to understand the deep of living, but also the pretty basic stuff, like does water have a taste or not? So yeah, something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly, Ferdinando, that it's this human's ability to examine even the simplest of things, like why do I like this cheese over that cheese, or why don't we all like the same cheese, or what is the best cheese if there is a best cheese, or is everything completely subjective, just as good and evil can be subjective, or there's some things that are absolute that have the line, or are there other things that are subjective and other things aren't. And that's another search of the philosopher. Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Okay, I think Isra is next.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Well, okay, I agree with Marcus's perspective in terms of having, like, we as humans are the ones who give value to things. That's what sets us apart, and that's what makes it not things, like in the categories of like what makes us apart or sets humans apart from everyone else. And I believe when it comes to philosophy itself, I agree with Ferdinando. It's not necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to be about deeper thoughts or deeper questions. It could be as simple as just questioning why you like certain things, or why would people like certain things. And I believe those of us who understand this early on, when I say early on, it's during our education or when we're learning something new, I believe that's when we can really formulate it into a really constructive sort of a thinking, where we can say that, okay, if it's applicable here, where else can it be applied, and how else can it benefit mankind, or how else can it benefit me, and so on and so forth. Just constantly thinking of greater good. So that sort of brings me to this position of, does everyone think of the greater good of mankind, especially when it comes to philosophical questions, I guess? Or would that be just like a couple of people who think that way, and then others agree or disagree with that perspective?
Yeah, I like what you said. Before I forget, since it's already been 4:30 and well, your battery is also low, and just so you know, we are working on having like a student highlight to post on social media. So those who want to be involved in this project that we're working on, you can just let us know. We're gonna reach out to you so we can start like mention a couple of your ideas of what philosophy is and things like that. I'm not completely, yeah.
No, yeah, yeah, agreed. Does anyone? I've loved this discussion. Does anyone have? Does anyone else really have anything on their mind, or do we want to hop on to like topic discussions for next week? Because I thought this was a fantastic discussion. I've loved every second of it, to be honest.
I kind of want to ask you a question, Marcus, real quick. So, I kind of agree with a lot what you said. But I'm wondering about something. So, do you believe that the primary function of a human is to create meaning?
It's to create meaning and to find the meaning in things. Let me say that. Not just to create it. Well, creating it is finding it in a way. It's like you create it by finding that things have meaning. You know, like does the sun, you know, its gorgeousness in the morning and its reflection on the trees and the water, etc. Does that have meaning? You've just found meaning in it just by liking it, by enjoying the presence of it. You've found that it gives this sense to you that is metaphysical, that does not reflect, that bricks cannot feel, that you know, wood cannot understand.
Just to make this kind of short, so maybe I kind of agree in a sense, but I kind of disagree. I don't think it's our function. I think it's inevitable. I think it's something that's possibly within our nature, but it's not our function. I agree more with the idea that we can make anything meaningful. If an artist wants to make meaningful the idea that I should create art, then that's their meaning. You know, if there's a person who wants to play baseball, wants to play basketball, and that's their whole life, then that's their meaning. You know, it's if someone decides that maybe philosophy and discovering Plato and Socrates and that's not for me, then they're not wrong for that. And I think that's just as simple as it is.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. The human experience allows us to find meaning in whatever, and as long as, you know, this is where the debate of good of evil comes in. Where are some things good to be like give meaning to, like, or are there bad things that you can also give meaning to, or is any meaning given to anything good just because you're giving it meaning? Which gets into scary territory of, you know, if I like it, then what's wrong with it? You know, which is really scary. But that's a topic maybe for next week. Good and evil. I believe we had someone else who wanted to say something though. If you wanted to go, Naomi, I believe if I said that right, hopefully.
It's Fortuna.
Oh wait, no, yeah, that's Fortuna. Yeah. You keep confusing me with the name.
Go
ahead.
I meant to change it, but it's okay. But to answer your question, Orlando, because I really love that question. It reminds me of Kantian philosophy about how, like, humans are valuable because we can assign value to other things. And a great analogy for that is kind of like the touch of King Midas. Is that his name? Midas? And he touches stuff and turns it to gold. And so basically that's saying the gold isn't valuable. He's valuable in and of itself because he's the one that can assign that value to other objects. He's the one that can turn things into gold. So who cares about the objects that he turns into gold? He's the one that's actually important. So to answer that question that I really like that question, can humans assign meaning to different things? Yeah, I would say we can, because just to go back to the table analogy, with the table, right? We confer meaning onto it. Oh, hey, this is a table. It's stuff that you can set down. You can eat stuff on it, off of it, and you can set stuff down on it. And other humans kind of, I guess, need to acknowledge that meaning and also assign that same meaning to it, whether it's in a different language, whether it's in English, and that's what gives it its meaning. So yeah, if I choose to call this a blurg, you know, this thing right here, if I just choose a random name for it, it doesn't mean anything. But if other people agree with me, yeah, that's a blurg. I don't know what a table is. I choose to call that a blurg, then yeah, that's meaning assigned to it.
So just based off that, I'm gonna go and say philosophy is absolutely meaningless. And it's only because we're all here that it matters.
Well said. I'll second that. I want to tag something. You know, Fortuna, when you referenced the King Midas, the Midas touch. What's so interesting with that analogy is that turns out to be his curse, because now everything he touches turns to gold, and you can't eat gold. He goes to hug his loved ones, and they turn to gold. I like that analogy, because maybe this you know, to quote Orlando, this nature we might have to ascribe meaning to an otherwise meaningless world. Maybe that's also a curse. Yeah. I mean, the only reason why you ever feel anything like sad or mad is because it's over things that you care about.
Ignorance is bliss. Exactly. Ignorance is bliss. Dogs are probably a lot more happier than we are.
Exactly.
Not mine right now. He's destroying the closet. It's been a battle this entire time with this dog. I'm sorry.
We should probably get to topic suggestions now, if anybody. I think Isra, did you have one? You can go ahead and just say it out loud.
Oh, wait, real quick. I just wanted, real quick, guys, I'm sorry. I want to circle back to something that was said at the very beginning. That was this idea that philosophy chose me, or philosophy found me, I think it was. Orlando, I think that was your phrase. I like that because everything that ensued afterwards, the conversation was all about how really when you come into your own as a human being is when you begin to discover philosophy. You discover philosophy as you're becoming philosophical. And so I just wanted to circle back around and say, I like how you put that, is that it's not so much that philosophy is it's a thing that finds you. It's more like you find out that you've always been philosophical. And maybe that's what's so what makes it uniquely enjoyable.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we can go ahead and proceed to topic suggestions.
Yes.
Marco, I like that topic suggestion. I don't know how we can make it philosophical, but I like it a lot.
Let me see what it is.
So ruling.
Can we talk about?
Oh, Jesus.
About
Well,
the
we already
remedy
have
in,
talked about good and
making more.
evil.
Yeah, how would we phrase that? Maybe justice. Like, what is justice, or?
Maybe. Well,
I might just throw out there that might be difficult to cram into an hour.
I mean, we
Justice.
come
Yeah.
to that problem every day. So.
I mean.
Okay. From the suggestions, I believe we can lump it all into probably one or two questions where we can say we can touch bases on all of those from where I'm looking at it. This could go into greater good, the discussion that Marcus suggested, the greater good of mankind, or even justice as Marcus or Fortuna suggested. So
I think a really broad way to put it is what is
good and
justice.
evil, but it'll be too vast, I think, just as a plain good and evil, because it can't be like succinctly put into that like an hour-long discussion,
I think what is justice kind of sums up everything there, and we can kind of have the LGBTQ kind of as the introduction to the whole discussion.
I will say it's interesting to look at the role of government in making these decisions for its people. And we can start off by talking about maybe LGBTQ plus rights, and then go into other decisions like gun control and like basically where does the line end and where does it begin? How much influence should the government have in our daily lives? So I guess kind of going into freedom. But I think it might be one-sided with the LGBTQ plus discussion, because I would hope most of us can agree with that.
It could be, but we don't have to just focus on that area, because sometimes what it seems justice for one people is injustice for other.
So could it be?
I like Emily's suggestion.
Freedom versus justice, maybe.
I guess I just don't want to argue about whether some people have a right to live their lives or not.
Emily suggested, how about the topic on anti-discrimination or discrimination in general, like how our culture is and how we can progress. I believe that's a good, like, open-ended question where we can lump in the LGBTQ community as well as justice, gun control, or basically how the government's decision-making process happens when they're considering a law to be passed or not.
That also goes with justice. Let me just say that's also justice, because in a justice system, the perfect state is perfect justice. And so there is nothing like that exists where there's unfairness, or et cetera, et cetera. Read The Republic by Plato. That was a cough. But I think, that goes along perfectly with justice. I personally, I think.
Yeah, if you guys have trouble sleeping, just open up the Plato Republic and
yeah, please. You can go and sleep very quick.
And it'll make you cry and say, if everyone in the world and all these people in power and go to these great schools, they have to have read this book. Why are they doing things so antithetical to it?
I was going to say, I read that book and then I can't fall asleep.
You think you've read that book, Marcus? I don't think every single one of them have.
Okay, so are we then deciding on Emily's idea for next week?
Yeah, discrimination and.
I mean, do we have another options? Because then the election is pretty much set.
What was that, Lindsay?
What about personal biases? Because a lot of these.
It's basically kind of like in line with discrimination. Huh.
Yeah, okay, so discrimination seems like it's kind of this nodal term that's uniting all these things. Or we could even say injustice.
I think personal biases probably overlays
I
discrimination.
think we're picking specific points of justice here. Like, are we not? Like, discrimination, is it right or wrong? Is that justice or is it just?
Oh my God.
Is personal biases just or unjust? It's almost like
Philosophy is
everything's
related to
about
justice.
justice. And we can get
He's
into,
forcing the connection. He's sparking the connection.
there you go, because we will get to every topic by that. We'll talk about discrimination. We'll talk about the LGBT people's right to everything. I don't know. That's
Freedom
I'll
itself.
shut up.
We should also talk about freedom too, though, because freedom is like where should we draw the line in someone's freedom, and when is it become injustice and justice?
Yes, like that's what I was. Yeah, that goes off of what I was saying earlier, Orlando. Where if I like enjoy something or if something I give meaning to, who's to tell me it's wrong if I enjoy it? But if there's a person out there who enjoys some sick things and like hurting people, etc. Well, if there's no God and if there's no meaning to anything, and we can create our own meaning, well, then what's the purpose of anything?
All right, you know what? Let's just put it in the chat how to phrase it and let everybody vote because this is taking too long.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just do that, and then you guys can just pick the number, and then we'll just phrase it that way. That's the topic. There you go.
So what are the options again? Justice and what else?
In the chat. So go ahead and type the number that you want for next week.
Should I help Marcus or not?
Are you guys typing? I didn't see I don't see anything.
What number is that, Isra?
That is Arabic for 3. My keyboard just switched to Arabic. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh my God.
I learned something new today.
That's 3. That's 3.
All right, so
I'm trying to fix it. There we go.
Can we find something more specific in terms of justice? Because I think a lot of philosophy is pertaining to justice. You know?
Well, I think we can use those specific examples to kind of lead into the conversation to be more direct.
Exactly. That way we talk about what everyone wants to talk about. We can talk about whether the government's stupid for doing the things over, like encroaching on people's freedoms. Should people have more freedom than the government, etc.? It's all part of justice. But
all right. Well, looks like we're getting a good amount of 3s here. Let's keep it in mind.
And 1s. So right now, I believe 1 and 3 is at a tie.
Is it
1, 2, 3? No, it's not.
5
It's
versus
not. I think 3 wins.
3 wins.
Has everybody voted? I think they have. Yeah, so it looks like it's justice is going to be the topic for next week. So awesome. Yeah.
Congratulations, Marcus.
No, congratulations.
the reason I choose it like that is because I know that we will. The reason I keep it so broad is that I know that we will literally speak on everything that everyone wants to talk about, and I think that it is the greatest opportunity to do such. Because I would love, because we can talk about human vices. We can talk about, you know, the way people encroach on others' freedoms and responsibilities, and like we can talk about how people like hate others just for being themselves, etc. Is that just to hate another human for being themselves or just for being what they are? It's like obviously not. It's not just. So blah blah blah, blah blah blah. I'm so excited for next week.
Hey guys, really quick. So what Fernando was saying about the student highlights, I'm gonna put the email down in the chat. If you guys are interested in that, you can go ahead and just send an email to ROC Outlook.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well,
Okie dokie.
meeting.
Thanks for coming, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank